course, last year in Bonn, there was the approval of a gender action plan. You know, implementing the Paris Agreement needs to be done in such a way that it takes into consideration the special circumstances of women, not just as victims, but also as active contributors to finding solutions. No, so that's one positive thing, and hopefully, it's not just a plan on paper, but something that actually gets funded. You know, there's a work program to make it concrete. So for this year, there's not much that negotiations around the gender action plan, or the gap as we call it, but it's actually just setting it into motion.
And that is something that will underlie the framework of the convention, and it will help make sure that in all of the technical negotiations there is a gendered lens that's put on it, and it also kind of interacts with these other processes that exist outside of the COP itself that help make sure there are more female identified delegates coming to COP, and that are helping to train up female identified negotiators, because for quite a long time there was an imbalance even in the people who were coming into this space. And so part of the objective there is to make sure that we have that kind of female leadership.
How climate change has impacted on the women, and then say that they are experiencing climate change. They don't have a local term for it, and it has impacted because they're usually fisher communities. The destruction of the effects of climate change on the resources has reduced, in fact, the fishing catch of their husbands. So they had to work harder. They have to be helping their add income, capital, family income for the children. And usually these women have many children. And they are from poor communities. They lack access to health and ecosystem services. And with climate change effects, it's affecting their lives, their families, and their communities.
So yeah, it affects women especially, because women in Asia Pacific countries, most of them, they are considered marginalized due to gender inequality. So in patriarchal society, women are sometimes even treated as a commodity or second class, and this doesn't help at all.
Talking about women, talking about gender, we are not only talking about the gender balance. We are not only talking about the numbers of the negotiators, numbers of the UN body that are staff in the UN bodies, but we are also talking about a lot of issues like the false solution, about the forestry issues, about the loss and damage, about the indigenous people issues. So making this climate is just, making this climate is include the gender justice, and it means that we have to make sure that all of the projects, all of the actions is not violating women's rights. We have to make sure that we not grab anymore women's livelihood, and we have to fulfill and we have to realize the justice for all of the people, men and women.
So things are pretty well, but the thing with the women and gender constituency is we are not just about gender and women's equality, but we're also looking at the bigger picture. You know, how governments here are committing to one thing and actually doing something else back home, because we feel first and foremost that there can never be gender justice without climate justice. So we see the struggle for gender equality, gender justice as parallel, you know, with the struggle for climate justice, for environmental rights, for public participation, for decent work, for indigenous rights. So it's a more holistic appreciation that our struggles are all interconnected.